Welcome back, subscribers, and welcome new viewers to today. I will be reading from my Saturn book, and it is going to be any of you who have natal Saturn in aspect to your natal Uranus. So that's opposition, square, conjunct, or even trine or sextile. And I want to thank each and every one of you for subscribing, liking, and sharing my videos, because that helps to circulate all of my videos out to more and more individuals just like you who are seeking this information. And I also want to thank Jake and Tashana for making this video today possible. So I thank all of you, and any of you who would like a natal wheel written interpretation from me, let me know. Send me an email. Send me your information. I'd be happy to. I work on donations, and those of you that don't already know, I now have a PayPal account, and so the PayPal link, donation link, is below this video, and all of my astrological videos, readings, including my intuitive readings from this year, 2022. Okay, so let's get started, and I hope this helps each and every one of you. And if you would like a written copy of what I'm about to read, send me an email and I will absolutely email one back to you. Okay. Saturn in aspect to Uranus. And I want to say too, I was getting pulled to absolutely say also that for some of you, this is essential right now, and this will be why you were being called to watch this specific video, because if you don't already know, the new moon in Taurus that happened on April 30th, also Uranus, transiting Uranus in Taurus, conjunct, close to grief, about 4.5 degrees. And so now through past, maybe even all month long, today I'm taping on the 8th of May, 2022. And we will be having a full moon on May 16th, not too far away. Some of you can probably already feel that, and it's in Scorpio, which opposes the transiting Uranus in Taurus. So again, you might want to check too to see if you have if your Uranus is being affected right now, or by any transiting, maybe transiting Saturn for some of you. I'm also getting your natal Saturn could be being affected by transiting Uranus for some of you. Okay. The outer or higher octave planets need to be considered first as a group because they have certain qualities in common. They appear to have some connection with what Jung terms the collective unconscious, or with what modern depth psychology now calls the transpersonal unconscious. And really quick, if you don't already know which are the outer planets, definitely Uranus is an outer planet. Pluto is an outer planet as well. And Saturn, I am not positive if that could be an outer planet as well. I'm not positive about that, but I know for sure Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto absolutely are outer planets. Okay. In other words, they bring the individual into contact with energies which are not wholly personal in nature, but which belong to the larger psychic unity of the group. In an esoteric sense, they may be considered symbols of urges toward development which are related to soul consciousness rather than personality consciousness, which is another and equally valid way of saying the same thing. This does not mean that the outer planets do not affect the individual in a distinctly individual way. It simply means that his experiences through these planets or through the functions of the psyche which they symbolize are likely to have a much broader significance, a more basic or archetypal quality, and are more likely to stimulate major steps in growth and major crises, which shape the entire life and expand the level of awareness of the whole, rather than the more specifically personal areas suggested by the planets within Saturn's orbit. Okay. And Saturn's orbit. The common consensus about the outer planets is that they signify the trends of the group or the generation to which the individual belongs, and that only in rare cases where they strongly aspect the sun or moon or conjunct the angles do they infuse any personal qualities into the character. On the charts of many people, they are considered to be bum notes, and that's in quotes, relatively inactive points, which, when they are stimulated by a transit, a progressed planet or someone else's natal chart are likely to be malefic in nature because they seem to behave in a fated or uncontrolled fashion through external circumstances which are often destructive to material or emotional security. This description applies as far as it goes, for these planets are certainly disruptive. However, as soon as we are able to understand that what is disruptive or negative to the comfort and happiness of the body, the feelings, or the intellect, may be highly constructive and fulfilling for the total psyche, then we may begin to come closer to the meaning of these three planets. Okay, so Saturn is not one of those three planets. The planets I said before, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Those are the three outer planets. Okay. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto certainly represent uncontrollable energies if we are talking about the control by the small conscious ego of the entire collective psyche of man. The question of quote-unquote controlling a planet is one of those pieces of presumption which is easy for the individual to discuss who has never turned inward to glimpse the kind of power inherent in the unconscious. One may visualize a man standing on a small island, surrounded by a turbulent ocean, attempting to command the forces of nature. His voice cannot even be heard above the tempest. He is a laughable figure until we realize that discussing the quote-unquote control of the planets is in a similar direction. These energies are not I don't know this word. INIMICAL, or malefic in nature. They serve the purposes of the total self or psyche and are only malefic when the conscious man decides to pit himself against the direction in which his inner self is attempting to unfold. Okay. Okay. So what that means, what this author is saying, if you don't already know, I'm being called that I need to say it in more plain terms for some of you, because it is a little difficult to understand at first for some. It was even kind of difficult for me. Okay, but what he's saying is, right, if you are trying to go against and trying to stay whatever Pluto, Uranus, or Neptune is disrupting, is changing, is making or doing its best to make you known what needs to be changed, whatever specific thing it's doing for you, it's stirring up for you. If you try and go against it and try and stop it and try and go the same way you were going previously, it's going to, you will create a very, very more and more difficult experiences for yourself, which we all do this, until you just let go and become consciously aware that that's what's happening. So by you listening to this today, if this is what's happening right now, then now you know what you have to do, and what Uranus specifically, and maybe for others of you too, Pluto or Neptune also you can look at and could be working this way as well for you right now in aspect to Saturn or another planet. Okay. So it's disruptive for a reason. It's for your own good. It's for your soul's own good, so that you can transform, you can get beyond a block in some way in your life right now. So it's a blessing in disguise, but we do have to go through painful experiences, unfortunately. Okay. Okay, so let's see here. This description applies as far as it goes, for these planets are certainly disruptive. However, as soon as we are able to understand that what is disruptive or negative to the comfort and happiness of the body, the feelings, or the intellect may be highly constructive and fulfilling for the total psyche, then we may begin to come closer to the meaning of these three planets. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto certainly represent uncontrollable energies if we are talking about the control by the small conscious ego of the entire collective psyche of man. Okay, now I already spoke of that. I'm going to now move down farther. That was important to read for some of you. And now let me continue on where I left off. Let's see. Rather than thinking about controlling Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, it is perhaps wiser to consider understanding them so that we may consciously cooperate with the unconscious urge toward wholeness and more inclusive consciousness, of which these planets are a symbol. Which is exactly what you're doing. That's why you were called and you felt pulled to listen to this video right now. The function of the destroyer has always had a place in mythology, although we do not understand it now except in its most literal and petty sense. In the Hindu pantheon of divinity, Shiva, the destroyer, is a necessary part of the Trinity. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are all destroyers in a sense, for they shake the foundations of the personal ego structure so that a glimpse of the larger unit of which the individual is a part may be seen. Saturn symbolizes the outermost perimeter of the structure of the personal ego. Okay, so it's Saturn is the last planet before you hit the outer planets. So it's the, okay, of the individual, of dealing with our own personal selves and what's going on with us. Okay. Saturn symbolizes the outermost perimeter of the structure of the personal ego. He apparently strives to keep these forces out so that man does not have to accept the humiliating idea that he is psychically one with other human beings. However, there is a fatal flaw in this personality structure, one which always causes the collapse of the structure. When this collapse occurs, the energies of the collective psyche always stream in. When this influx of collective energies occurs, two things can happen. If the man is able to interpret the stream so that he acts as a transmitter or communicator of the unconscious needs of the group, then we say that he is a genius because he has the gift of personifying an archetype so that men can see a reflection of their deepest inner urges in this individual's creations. If the man is unable to keep this concept of himself separate from the collective stream and begins to think that he himself, as a personality, is this stream, then we say that he is mad because he's trying to be the archetype rather than to communicate it, and in consequence loses touch with personal reality. The outer planets have strong connections with both genius and madness, between which two states the borderline, as the saying goes, is very thin. In spite of this important area of human experience, traditional astrology usually tells us that Saturn in square, so any of you who have Saturn square your Uranus, is unimportant, and that's in quotes. That Saturn conjunct Neptune has not much meaning for the individual. So if any of you have Saturn conjunct Neptune and you've read the saying that other astrologers have said that not much meaning for the individual for Saturn conjunct Neptune, or Saturn square Uranus, and that Saturn trine Pluto only has bearing on the generation into which the person is born. We are also told that Saturn-Uranus contacts precipitate sudden catastrophes. So basically what this author is saying, and I agree with this author, that any astrologer, anyone that's trying to say that Saturn conjunct Neptune or Saturn square Uranus or Saturn trine Pluto, because the trine are the easy aspects. So if you have Saturn trine Pluto is only positive, no, that's not true. And if you have Saturn conjunct Neptune, which is hard aspect, is not important, that's not true. And lastly, if any of you have Saturn in one of the hardest aspect, in my opinion, is square. So if you had Saturn, your natal Saturn, square your natal Uranus, and you've ever heard that that's unimportant, that's not true. So what this author is saying is that we're also told that Saturn-Uranus contacts precipitate sudden catastrophes. and that Saturn-Neptune contacts foster deceit, and that Saturn-Pluto contacts have some association with death and with subversive and criminal organizations. Obviously, the human race is not divided up between those who express genius and those who express madness. There are times in the life of every individual, however, when the energies of the collective unconscious impinge upon the ordinary field of personal life. Each person has his moments of genius and his moments of madness, although they are not sustained. So you're going to have a mixture. You're not going to have all of one. It is at these moments when we come closest to experiencing the true nature of ourselves. These experiences are called peak experiences in depth psychology. They have also been called experiences of cosmic consciousness, which is unfortunately no more helpful than peak experience in trying to describe the indescribable quality of an inner subjective perception of one's whole self. These are deeply personal experiences, although they may also be considered as moments when the personality is lost or dies in the light of the larger perception of life. It is these experiences which are the field of the outer planets, and it is probable that contacts of these three planets with Saturn create a stronger tendency towards this kind of experience because the flaw in the ego structure is greater. Jupiter-Saturn contacts have some connection also with this field of peak experience or perception of the self, but without the archaic, impersonal, destructive feel that the outer planets bring to the experience. There is nothing of the destroyer in Jupiter. However, it is possible that the destructiveness aspect of the outer planets is responsible in part for their tremendous power for growth. Absolutely, absolutely. The greater, the more painful, the more destructive and hard experiences that each one of us goes through, which has everything to do with Pluto or Uranus or Neptune transiting and or natal to other planets, even our nodes of the moon, is a major, major deal, but it does create the quickest and deepest growth. That is absolutely true because it is the most devastating. The realm of the outer planets is not very accessible to the earthy man who is polarized in his desire nature. But even the earthy man is affected, whether he is consciously able to register the effects or not. If the conscious self is not yet sensitive enough to understand these energies, it does not mean that they do not influence or find response in the unconscious. So you might not consciously know. That's what it's saying, is it's going to bring up stuff for you that is either it's in your unconscious, it's in your subconscious, that you're not aware of about what is inside you, what's blocking you. For the individual who has not passed the boundary of Saturn in terms of his level of awareness, the outer planets simply work in the dark. But they continue to have meaning. What you're doing now, viewers that are still listening and listening to this, you are bringing this out of your unconscious, out of your subconscious, wherever it is placed. They're two different. Subconscious and unconscious are different. You're bringing it out into your conscious awareness, your frontal lobe. so that you can start taking care of it and you can deal with it differently. That's what you're now doing. So that's awesome. One may live in an underground cave and be unaware of the sun's rising and setting, but this does not stop the sun from rising and setting. We tend to possess the unfortunate idea that if we do not understand something, it does not exist. The tragedy of the outer planets is that they are so often unrecognized, and the motivations which they symbolize are either wholly ignored or considered to be mystical claptrap. Even when these urges are presented in the light of empiric psychological investigation, they are still mystical claptrap to many people. Consequently, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, when they stream into the field of personal life, often bring tragedy and destruction with them. This is not fate, but the persistent blindness of the individual to his own inner rhythms and inner unfoldment. So it really, really, truly is for your own benefit, your soul's benefit, that you didn't know. You didn't know whatever destructiveness is happening or has happened in the past. Now you can see, hopefully understand why it had to happen that way, or why it is happening to you now, or why anything in the future like this may happen to you. It needs to happen. It must happen for your further development and growth, because you weren't able to get to it. And we're not able to get to everything. Not our stuff, not our south nodes. So those of you that know what I'm talking about south nodes, that's what I specialize in on 27 plus years astrological experience, especially with the south nodes of the moon. Okay. We're used to assuming that the ancients were ignorant of these planets, since the astrology of antiquity only included 7 bodies. They were very probably consciously unaware of the outer planets, and there seems to be much truth in the idea that the conscious discovery of each outer planet has corresponded to the emergence into racial or group consciousness of the meaning of the planet. This is an example of synchronicity, as Jung describes the term: the simultaneous occurrence of an inner unfoldment and an outer circumstance which have no causal connection to each other but are connected by meaning. Thus, on a mundane level, the discovery of Uranus coincided with the dawn of the electrical and industrial age, as well as with 2 great political revolutions which resulted in the birth of a new form of government. Inwardly, the collective psyche of man had perhaps developed to the point where the ideals of brotherhood, freedom, individuality, and control by the mind of the forces of nature were possible of conscious expression. Let me see what time we are at. Okay, we still have time. There seems, however, to be evidence that our apparently unevolved predecessors were unconsciously aware of these energies, because they are presented in mythology in a peculiar and meaningful fashion. All 3 deities are, in myth, invisible, mysterious, hidden, and not easily approached. Uranus vanishes from the Olympian pantheon after his castration and loss of power at the hands of Saturn. It is never even made clear whether he dies or not, if it is possible for a god to die. He remains only in indirect form because The Furies, or goddesses of justice and retribution, spring from his blood, and Venus, the goddess of love, rises from the ocean into which have been thrown his severed genitals. Pluto rules the underworld and rarely emerges from his lair. When he does, he is veiled and invisible and cannot be seen by the eyes of man. Neptune likewise rules a hidden world at the bottom of the sea, and also, as Poseidon, shakes the earth from his hidden underground caverns. Mythology has the quality of presenting the contents of the collective unconscious in a pure and unadulterated form, because it is distilled from many centuries and many overlayings of individual interpretation. The hidden or unknown quality of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto is certainly suggestive of the unconscious perception of these energies. Saturn and Uranus are ancient enemies, and the aspects of Saturn to Uranus are not particularly easy from the point of view of personality comfort. The urge to break free from the confines of matter and material identification, to release the power of creative thought, and to learn to master the forces of nature by the power of the mind is not easily wedded to Saturn's tendency to identify with the form and to isolate himself from anything which is of group concern. Some of the inner struggle of the Aquarian personality, torn between the extremes of his abstract vision, intuitively perceived, and his respect for form and logic, may be understood when he is seen under the rulership of these two planets. Okay, the reason why, for those of you that don't know, Uranus is the natural planet for Aquarius, and Uranus, the planet, the energy is all about quick change, quick surprises. You don't see it coming. And Uranus and Pluto usually, for many in your natal wheel, are going to be conjunct each other. So it'll be in the same sign, both planets, and obviously in the same house for most of us. And so that's what they're saying, is because that is group consciousness. So many, Pluto is like 18 years, 28 years that it takes. And so it's many, a huge chunk of people born within that span of time. And Uranus, I don't recall exactly how long Uranus is, but it's right there with Pluto most of the time for most of us. So that's a long time too. So that's why they're saying it's group consciousness. It has everything to do not just with personal, but with group, because everyone that was born around you for years and years are going to have the same Pluto, same Uranus. Not necessarily the same house, but the same sign. And so that's group consciousness. Okay. And Saturn is all about logic. And logic. It's the authority figure. It watches over you, making sure you do things correctly according to the house placement and the sign placement. Okay. And so they're going to battle each other a bit. Things are going to come out. Okay, so let's see here. The capacity to conceive of an idea and work with it as though it has as much substance and as much reality as a concrete object, which it does through the eyes of the Uranian, is not a widespread talent at present. It touches the world of magic and metaphysics, where thought is reality, and the power to concentrate on an idea is connected with power over material life. Recently, it has become evident through scientific experimentation that thought has the power to affect matter. Absolutely. Thoughts are things. This is truly a vindication of the Uranian vision. We are beginning to deduce through the fringe schools of healing and medicine, such as radionics and homeopathy, that man is composed of more subtle kinds of energy than the physical body alone, and that thought affects these subtle energies and in turn affects the state of physical health. And who I received the information, thoughts are things, was from Dr. Joe Dispenza, who wrote a book about that. And I don't know if it was his first book, but if it wasn't his first, it was one of his first books years ago. So you might want to check that out. But he's just one. I'm sure there are many other scientists who have also stated that fact. Now, almost 200 years after this discovery, Uranus is beginning to make himself known to man in a truly meaningful way. It has taken us 2 centuries to feel the impact of the archetype in the field of consciousness. Through these new eyes, Saturn also emerges in a different form, and the opportunity available to the individual with Saturn-Uranus contacts is perhaps along the lines of earthing or making manifest the creative vision of Uranus. So all of you viewers are very much needed in this Aquarian age to help bring that, what it just said, the vision of Uranus. Again, who is the planet for Aquarius. That's Aquarius planet. That's Aquarius's planet. And we are now in the Aquarius age. And again, transiting Uranus right now is in Taurus, which squares Aquarius and Leo. Okay. That's why this is a big time, and I felt very strongly. And I thank you again, Jake and Tashana, for bringing this out for me having the ability to now speak this and give this video reading, because it is essential right now in time, right now, for all of us, 2022. Okay. And all of you who have major aspects to these transiting planets, Taurus and Scorpio, especially right now. Okay. Okay, so let's see. But I have to say, even if you're watching this later, because this is a timeless video, years from now or whenever you watch this, you check out then where Uranus, transiting Uranus is for you in the timeline that you are watching this video, and Saturn as well. And then you check it out with your natal wheel, because it will be essential for you whenever you're watching this. Okay. Let me see. Okay. I'm getting close to, I'm not going to be able to finish the reading. So I have like 2.5 more pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right here. And so all of you that want to join me, I will add a link for the second part in the description box below this video. And then I will do the same thing with part 2. So putting section 1 for everyone. So, okay, so wow, this is a really big deal. So hopefully you will join me. I will continue right where I left off in part 2. Okay, so Thank you all, and we'll see you soon in part 2.